The invitation. Darius Webb's shuttle touched down on Thessera's southern pole just as the gas giant above painted the sky in swirling amber. 3 months of hauling cargo across the outer colonies had left him weary, and Venya's invitation had been unexpected, a bright spot in his solitary existence. He'd met her in the research outpost's dining hall 2 days ago. Silver-tinged skin, violet eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies, a voice like distant music. They'd talked for hours about Earth, about the stars, about loneliness in the void. When she invited him to share a meal at her home, he'd imagined something simple. The biodome that rose before him was anything but simple. "This is where you live?" he asked as they approached the shimmering structure. "Where my circle dwells," Venya replied mysteriously. Through the atmospheric seal, Darius stepped into paradise. Silverbark trees glowed softly in perpetual twilight, luminous streams sang between humming stones, and flowers released sweet perfume into air that tasted of starlight. Then he saw them. Dozens of women moved through the garden with ethereal grace, tending plants, reclining by pools, conversing beneath glowing fruit trees. Each one was breathtaking, their silver skin catching light like moonbeams. All turned to watch him enter, and Darius froze under the weight of their collective gaze. "Venya." His voice failed him. Her hand found his, warm and steady.
"Come."
"There's nothing to fear." She guided him deeper, past women who smiled knowingly, past alcoves echoing with soft laughter, past pools where others bathed in sparkling water. Every eye followed their progress. Every whispered comment in their musical language seemed to be about him. "These are my sisters," Venya explained as they reached the garden's heart, where cushions and laden tables waited. "The Starborn, bound by ancient covenant. 43 of us share this circle." 43. Darius breathed, his mind spinning. "Does that frighten you?" Her thumb traced his palm, sending unexpected warmth through him. He turned to her, and despite being surrounded by otherworldly beauty, he saw only Venya, her knowing smile, her luminous eyes, the intelligence dancing in her expression. "Not frightened," he admitted. "Just overwhelmed." "Good." She drew him down onto the cushions, settling close beside him. "Then let me show you Starborn hospitality." As the sisters gathered around them in a gentle semicircle, Darius felt the atmosphere shift. This wasn't judgment, it was curiosity. Welcome. Perhaps even celebration. One sister with deep violet markings across her shoulders brought them crystalline cups filled with luminous liquid. Another presented a platter of fruit that glowed from within. A third simply smiled at him with genuine warmth before retreating to give them space. "They are beautiful," Darius murmured. "They are my family," Venya said softly. "But tonight, I wanted you to know me. To know us. To understand what it means to be Starborn." Her fingers intertwined with his, and in that simple gesture, Darius felt something profound shift. Whatever he'd expected from this evening, he'd crossed a threshold into something far more significant. A world where beauty and mystery intertwined, where ancient traditions met the possibility of something new, where one woman's violet eyes promised answers to questions he hadn't known he was asking. Above them, through the transparent dome, the gas giant churned in slow majesty. The garden hummed with life and light. And as the Starborn sisters began to gather closer, their melodic voices rising in what sounded like welcome, Darius realized his lonely journey through the stars had just led him somewhere extraordinary. Venya leaned closer, her breath warm against his ear. "Are you ready, Darius Webb?" He squeezed her hand, his heart racing with anticipation and wonder. "I think so." Her smile was radiant. "Then let the evening begin." The ritual of welcome. The Starborn sisters arranged themselves in a graceful circle as twilight deepened overhead. The gas giant's amber glow filtered through the dome, casting everything in warm, dreamlike light. Darius found himself at the circle's center beside Venya, acutely aware of dozens of violet and silver eyes watching him with gentle curiosity. "We begin each gathering with stories," Venya explained, her voice carrying easily in the garden's perfect acoustics. "It's how we share our lives, our dreams, our connections to the universe." A sister with intricate silver patterns along her temples spoke first, her words flowing in the Starborn language like water over stones. Though Darius couldn't understand, He felt the emotion: joy, loss, wonder. The others listened with rapt attention, occasionally offering soft harmonizing sounds that seemed to acknowledge and support the speaker. When the story ended, another sister turned to Darius. "Tell us of Earth," she said in accented but clear universal standard. "Venya speaks of blue oceans and green forests. Are they as beautiful as she claims?" Darius cleared his throat, suddenly nervous. "More beautiful than I can describe. Oceans that stretch to the horizon, forests so dense you can walk for days under their canopy, mountains that pierce the clouds." As he spoke, he felt their attention intensify, not invasive, but deeply engaged. They asked questions about rain, about seasons, about the animals he'd seen. Their fascination was genuine, almost childlike in its enthusiasm. But through it all, he felt Venya's presence beside him like a warm current. Her hand rested lightly on his knee, her shoulder pressed against his. Each time he glanced at her, he found her watching him with an expression that made his pulse quicken, pride mixed with something deeper, more intimate. The feast began as stars emerged overhead. Platters of luminous fruit, dishes that tasted of honey and starlight, breads that dissolved on the tongue like sweetened air. A sister with deep copper undertones in her silver skin poured more of the glowing liquid into his cup. "It's called star wine," Venya murmured. "Made from flowers that only bloom during eclipses. It helps you feel what we feel, the connections between us." As Darius drank, warmth spread through his chest. The garden seemed to brighten, the sisters' voices to harmonize more perfectly. He felt welcomed, accepted, as though invisible threads were being woven between him and everyone present. "You're doing wonderfully," Venya whispered, her lips close to his ear. The intimacy of the gesture sent shivers down his spine. "I feel like I'm in a dream," he admitted quietly. "Perhaps you are." Her fingers traced patterns on his palm beneath the table, hidden from the others but achingly present to him. "Or perhaps you're finally waking up." As the meal continued, the sisters began to sing, a haunting melody that seemed to resonate with the very air. Their voices intertwined in impossible harmonies, creating music that was both alien and achingly familiar. Darius found tears streaming down his face without understanding why. Venya's hand tightened around his. "They're singing the song of welcome. It means you're no longer a stranger here." "But I barely know any of you," he protested softly. "We are starborn," she replied. "We know souls, not just faces. And your soul." She paused, turning to look at him fully. In the starlight and garden glow, her beauty was almost painful to behold. "Your soul resonates with ours. With mine." The song reached its crescendo and faded into comfortable silence. Sisters began to drift away in pairs and small groups, leaving the central gathering space gradually emptier. Darius realized with a mixture of relief and nervous anticipation that they were being given privacy. Finally, only a handful remained at a respectful distance, their quiet conversations creating a gentle backdrop. Venya stood gracefully, extending her hand to him. "Walk with me, Darius Webb. There's something I want to show you, something the others need not see." His heart hammered as he took her hand and rose. The star wine hummed pleasantly in his veins, making everything feel slightly unreal, heightened. As she led him away from the gathering space toward a darker section of the garden, he heard gentle laughter from the remaining sisters, knowing, approving. The path wound between towering trees whose leaves chimed softly in an unfelt breeze. Venya's hand was warm in his, her thumb occasionally stroking his knuckles in a way that felt both comforting and thrilling. "Where are we going?" he asked, though part of him didn't care as long as her hand stayed in his. She glanced back at him, her violet eyes reflecting starlight. "To the heart of the garden. Where the oldest tree grows." "Where?" She hesitated, vulnerability flashing across her features. "Where I can speak to you without my sister's loving but overwhelming presence." They rounded a bend, and Darius caught his breath. Ahead, a massive tree rose toward the dome's apex, its silver bark seeming to pulse within a light. Beneath its spreading canopy, flowers bloomed in every color imaginable, their petals glowing like captive stars. "It's beautiful," he breathed. "It's sacred," Venya corrected gently. "And it's where I want to share the truth with you, about why I truly invited you here tonight. Beneath the canopy. The sacred tree's canopy created a cathedral of light and shadow. Flowers the size of Darius's palm drifted down on and felt currents, their glow fading as they touched the soft moss beneath their feet. Venya led him to the tree's base where roots had formed natural seats, smooth and warm to the touch. She released his hand, and he immediately missed the contact. For a moment, she stood before him, backlit by the flower's ethereal light, looking like something from a myth. Then she sat, gesturing for him to join her. I haven't been entirely honest with you, Venya began, her voice barely above a whisper. When we met in the dining hall, it wasn't chance. I had seen you through the observation windows, watching you work on your ship. The way you moved, so solitary, so self-contained. It called to something in me. Darius settled beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. I don't understand. The Starborn are ancient, she continued, her gaze distant. Our traditions stretch back millennia. We live in circles, connected telepathically, sharing joy and sorrow as one. It's beautiful, and it's also. She trailed off, searching for words. Suffocating. We're never alone. Never truly individual. Our choices are made for the collective good. That sounds lonely in its own way, Darius observed. Her head turned sharply toward him, surprise and relief flooding her features. Yes. Exactly yes. No one has ever understood that before. Her hand found his again, gripping tightly. I invited you here because I wanted. I needed to know if connection could exist without telepathy. If two souls could recognize each other across species, across tradition, across everything we're told should keep us apart. Darius's heart raced. And can they? Instead of answering, Venya reached up with her free hand to touch his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw with tender curiosity. You're so different from us. Your skin is warmer, rougher. Your eyes hold depths I can't read telepathically. It's terrifying and exhilarating all at once. He turned into her touch, his own hand rising to cup her cheek. Her skin was cool silk beneath his palm, that subtle silver sheen catching the flower light. I've been alone for so long, he confessed. Moving from station to station, never staying anywhere long enough to matter to anyone. When you smiled at me in that dining hall, I felt something I'd forgotten existed, hope. Hope, she repeated softly, as though tasting the word. Yes. That's what you represent to me too. They sat in charged silence, faces inches apart, the weight of possibility hanging between them. Above, through gaps in the canopy, the gas giant continued its eternal dance across the sky. My sisters know why I brought you here, Venya continued, her voice trembling slightly. They've been remarkably understanding, even supportive. But the matriarch. She closed her eyes briefly. She'll come tomorrow. She'll demand to know my intentions. Whether this is mere curiosity or something deeper. And is it? Darius asked, his thumb stroking her cheekbone. Something deeper. Venya's eyes opened, and in them he saw vulnerability and desire warring with uncertainty. I think it could be. If you want it to be. If you're not frightened by what it might mean, for both of us. I'm terrified, he admitted with a breathless laugh. I walked into a garden full of the most beautiful beings I've ever seen, and all I can think about is you. Your voice. Your eyes. The way you squeeze my hand when you're trying to make a point. It doesn't make sense, but it feels more real than anything I've known. Something shifted in her expression, a decision made, a wall coming down. She leaned closer, her breath warm against his lips. May I? Please, he whispered. Their first kiss was tentative, exploratory, two different species learning the geography of each other's mouths. Her lips were cooler than his, softer, tasting faintly of the star wine they'd shared. She made a small sound in her throat, surprise or pleasure, and her hand slid into his hair. Darius pulled her closer, deepening the kiss, and she responded with sudden urgency. The telepathic silence she'd described, this must be what she'd been seeking. Pure physical connection without the overlay of shared thoughts. Just sensation, emotion, the press of body against body. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Venya rested her forehead against his. That was... Yeah, he agreed, unable to form more eloquent words. She laughed, the sound like bells in the garden's hushed atmosphere. Then her expression grew serious again. Darius, I need you to understand what you'd be choosing if we pursue this. My people are traditional. Bonding with an outsider, especially a human, will have consequences. I may lose my place in the circle. We may face exile together. He cupped her face in both hands, making her look at him. I've been in exile my whole adult life, from Earth, from connection, from meaning. If being with you means facing those things together instead of alone, I'll take that chance. Will you? Tears glistened in her violet eyes, catching flower light like captured stars. I will, she whispered. Ancestors help me, I will. This time when they kissed, there was no hesitation. Darius pulled her onto his lap, her body fitting against his as though designed for this exact purpose. Her hands explored his shoulders, his back, learning him through touch. His fingers tangled in her hair, traced the elegant line of her neck, marveled at the cool silk of her skin. The sacred tree seemed to glow brighter above them, its flowers releasing fresh waves of intoxicating perfume. Time became meaningless beneath that canopy. There was only Venya's mouth on his, her soft sighs, the way she trembled when he kissed the sensitive spot below her ear. We should go back, she murmured eventually, though she made no move to leave his embrace. The sisters will wonder. Let them wonder, Darius replied, his lips against her throat. Unless you want to go. She pulled back just enough to look at him, her expression fierce and tender all at once. I want to stay here with you until the stars fade. But tomorrow brings challenges, and we'll need to face them with clear minds. Reluctantly, he loosened his hold, letting her slide from his lap but keeping her hand firmly in his. Tomorrow then. Whatever comes. Whatever comes, she echoed, sealing the promise with one more lingering kiss. As they walked back through the garden hand in hand, Darius noticed the remaining sisters watching with knowing smiles. But there was no judgment there, only acceptance, curiosity, and perhaps even hope that something new was beginning in their ancient circle. Something that might change everything. The morning of questions. Dawn on the Sara was a gradual affair, the gas giant's reflected light slowly warming from deep amber to brilliant gold. Darius woke on a cushioned platform near the garden's edge, Venya curled against his side, her breathing soft and even. Several other sisters slept nearby in their own alcoves, the entire circle having transformed into a communal sleeping space as night fell. He'd expected awkwardness, waking surrounded by alien women in an intimate setting. Instead, he felt peaceful, accepted, as though he'd found a place that might, impossibly, become home. Venya stirred, her eyes opening to find him watching her. A slow smile spread across her face. Good morning, Darius Webb. Good morning, he murmured, resisting the urge to kiss her with so many others nearby. She seemed to read his restraint and laughed softly. We're not shy about affection here. The sisters wouldn't mind. But before he could respond, a ripple of awareness moved through the garden. Sisters began to rise, their expressions shifting from sleepy contentment to alertness. Venya sat up quickly, tension suddenly radiating from her frame. She's here, Venya whispered. The matriarch. Earlier than I expected. Through the garden's entrance came three figures, two sisters he hadn't seen the night before, flanking an older woman whose presence commanded immediate attention. Her silver skin held deeper undertones, almost platinum, and her eyes were a shade of violet so dark they appeared nearly black. She moved with absolute authority, and the garden sisters immediately arranged themselves in respectful formation. Venya stood, pulling Darius up with her. Stand tall, she whispered. Show no fear. The matriarch's gaze swept across the assembled sisters before settling on Darius with an intensity that made him feel utterly transparent. When she spoke, her voice carried an otherworldly resonance that seemed to vibrate in his bones. So this is the human who has captured young Venya's attention. She spoke universal standard with perfect precision. Darius Webb, cargo pilot, born in the Earth colonies, registered with the Outer Trade Commission. Unremarkable in every measurable way. Matriarch Silane, Venya said, stepping slightly forward. I invited Darius here with full knowledge of our traditions. I claim responsibility for. Silence. The single word cut through the air like a blade. Silane moved closer, circling Darius like a predator assessing prey. I will hear from the human first. Tell me, Darius Webb, do you understand what you've done by accepting the intimate hospitality of a starborn circle? Darius met her dark eyes steadily, refusing to be intimidated despite his racing heart. I understand that Venya honored me with an invitation. That her sisters welcomed me with kindness and curiosity. That I shared food, conversation, and... He paused, glancing at Venya. A connection that feels genuine and rare. Genuine and rare, Silane repeated mockingly. Pretty words from a species known for impulsive attachments. How many women have you claimed to love in your travels, human? None, Darius replied honestly. I've kept myself apart specifically to avoid empty connections. What I feel for Venya isn't impulse, it's recognition. Several sisters gasped softly. Silane's expression flickered with something that might have been surprise. Recognition, the matriarch said slowly. You claim to recognize a soul across species, without benefit of telepathic communion, without understanding our traditions, our bonds, the sacred nature of what you've intruded upon. I claim to recognize someone who sees me, Darius said firmly. Who chose to bridge the gap between our peoples. Who risked exactly this confrontation because she believed connection matters more than tradition. Silane turned to Venya, her expression unreadable. Is this true? You risk your place in the circle for this human. Venya stepped forward, head high, and took Darius's hand. I risk nothing, matriarch, because I choose freely. Our traditions speak of bonds formed through telepathy, yes. But they also speak of the sacred nature of individual choice. I choose Darius. I choose the possibility of something new. Individual choice, Silane said coldly, exists within the framework of collective responsibility. Your bonding with an outsider affects every sister in this circle. It weakens our telepathic links, introduces foreign elements into our sacred communion, and sets a precedent that could unravel everything we've maintained for millennia. Or, said a voice from the gathered sisters, it could strengthen us in ways we haven't imagined. The sister with copper undertones stepped forward. Matriarch, forgive my interruption, but I must speak. Last night, I felt something through our bond, not the usual harmony, but something stronger. Joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy radiating from Venya. It reminded me why we formed circles in the first place, not to trap ourselves in tradition, but to amplify what makes life beautiful. Another sister joined her. I felt it too. And when the humans spoke of Earth, of loneliness, I felt understanding. Empathy beyond our species. Isn't that also sacred? Silane's expression hardened. You would allow sentiment to override wisdom. I would allow love to have a voice, the copper-toned sister replied steadily. The matriarch fell silent, her gaze moving between Venya, Darius, and the gathered sisters. The garden itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting. There will be a trial, Silane finally announced. At sunset, Darius Webb will stand before the full council. You will prove your devotion through the trial of intentions, an ancient rite where truth cannot hide. If you fail, you will leave this moon and never return. If you succeed... She paused, something almost like curiosity entering her expression. If you succeed, we will discuss what new traditions might be possible. She turned to leave, then glanced back. Prepare him, Venya. The trial will test more than words. It will test the very foundation of what he claims to feel. As the matriarch departed, Venya sagged against Darius, relief and tension warring in her frame. He held her close, very aware of dozens of eyes watching them. What is this trial? He asked quietly. Venya looked up at him, fear and hope mingled in her violet eyes. It's telepathic. They'll enter your mind, read your deepest thoughts and feelings. Every doubt, every fear, every hidden motive, it will all be laid bare. Darius's stomach clenched, but he didn't let go. Then they'll see the truth. That I want this. That I want you. They'll also see everything else, she whispered. Every dark thought, every moment of weakness. Are you ready for that? He cupped her face gently, aware of her sisters watching this intimate moment. For you? Yes. For the chance at something real? Absolutely yes. Around them, the Starborn sisters began to murmur among themselves, some supportive, some concerned, all deeply invested in what would happen when sunset came. The trial was coming. And with it, the fate of everything they'd begun beneath the sacred tree. A new beginning. The Sylvari High Council chamber was intimidating, a circular room with crystalline walls that seemed to pulse with ancient power. 7 council members sat in elevated seats, their expressions carved from ice. Jace stood beside Sora, acutely aware he was the only human in the room. His formal petition had delayed his transfer by 2 weeks, but if this failed, he'd be gone tomorrow. Commander Thalen stood opposite them, his face twisted with disapproval. Honored Council, this case is simple. Captain Valen violated sacred law by forming a romantic attachment with an alien. Our codes exist for good reason, to maintain discipline and prevent weakness in our warriors. Captain Valen has served with distinction for 15 years, the eldest council member said, her voice like wind chimes. What defense do you offer for breaking your vows? Sora stepped forward, spine straight. I offer no defense for my actions, honored council. I broke the law knowingly, and I accept the consequences. But I do question whether the law itself still serves our people. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Such direct challenge was nearly unheard of. Explain yourself, another council member demanded. Our isolation laws were written when we feared contamination from other species, when we believed contact would weaken us. Sora's voice rang clear and strong. But we've been part of the Galactic Alliance for 50 years now. We fight alongside humans, trade with them, live beside them. How can we claim they weaken us when they've proven themselves worthy allies? This is about more than alliance, Thalen interjected. It's about maintaining the purity of our warrior culture. With respect, Commander, purity through isolation is stagnation. Sora gestured to Jace. During the recent pirate attack, this human and I saved 12 lives working together. Our connection didn't compromise my effectiveness, it enhanced it. I fought harder, thought clearer, because I had something precious to protect. Love makes warriors vulnerable, Thalen insisted. Does it? Jace found his voice, stepping forward despite his nerves. Honored Council, may I speak? The eldest member inclined her head. Proceed, human. I'm just an engineer, not a soldier. But I've watched Sora lead her troops, and I've seen how they follow her. Do you know why? Not because she's ruthless or cold. It's because she cares about them. She remembers their names, their families, their hopes. His voice grew stronger. That capacity to care, that's not weakness. That's exactly what makes her an extraordinary warrior. Silence fell over the chamber. The council members exchanged glances, communicating in subtle ways Jace couldn't interpret. You ask us to overturn centuries of tradition, the eldest said finally. What exactly do you propose? Sora took a breath. Amend the law to allow warriors the freedom to form relationships as they choose, with accountability for maintaining their duties. Trust your warriors to be strong enough to balance both love and honor. And if we refuse? If we uphold the law and exile you? Then I accept exile with honor. Sora's voice didn't waver. I will never regret loving someone worthy of love. If that makes me unfit to be Sylvari in your eyes, then perhaps I no longer understand what being Sylvari truly means. The council deliberated for hours. Jace and Sora waited in an antechamber, hands clasped together, neither speaking. What was there to say? They'd given everything they had. Finally, they were summoned back. The eldest council member stood. Captain Valen, we have reviewed your service record, the testimonials from your squad, and the evidence of your conduct during crisis situations. We have also considered the changing nature of our society and our place in the galaxy. Jace's heart hammered so hard he thought everyone could hear it. While we cannot condone the breaking of established law, we acknowledge that perhaps this law no longer serves its intended purpose. Therefore, we are issuing an official amendment. Sylvari warriors may engage in romantic relationships with other species, provided such relationships do not demonstrably compromise their duties. Relief flooded through Jace, but the council member wasn't finished. However, Captain Valen, your deliberate violation of standing law cannot go without consequence. We are offering you a choice: return to active duty with a formal reprimand on your record, or accept an honorable discharge with full pension and benefits. Sora stood silent for a long moment. Then she said clearly, "I choose honorable discharge." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Even Jace looked at her in shock. "You would leave the military?" Thalen sputtered. "After everything?" "I would choose freedom," Sora replied. "I've served the Sylvari Empire faithfully for 15 years. I'm proud of that service. But I'm ready for a new chapter, one where I decide my own path." The council members nodded slowly. "Then it is decided. Captain Valen, you are hereby honorably discharged from the Sylvari military, with our gratitude for your service and our blessings for your future." 3 months later, Jace stood in the observation deck of Nexus Station Theta, watching ships drift past. Arms wrapped around him from behind, and he smiled. "Couldn't sleep." Sora's voice was warm against his ear. "Just thinking about everything that's changed." She moved beside him, and he marveled at how different she looked now. Still beautiful, still strong, but softer somehow. Happier. "Any regrets?" he asked. "About leaving the military?" Sora considered. "Sometimes. I miss my squad. But the station's security chief position suits me. I still protect people, but now I come home to you every night. That's worth any sacrifice." "The Council's law change is spreading," Jace said. "I heard 2 more warrior planets are considering similar amendments." "Good." Sora leaned her head on his shoulder. "Maybe someday love won't be seen as weakness anywhere. Maybe someday we'll just be normal." Jace laughed. "There's nothing normal about us. A human engineer and a legendary warrior who collided in a docking bay and accidentally fell in love. The best accident of my life." She turned to kiss him softly. "Though I still maintain you should watch where you're going." "And I maintain it was destiny." "Destiny." Sora smiled that smile he loved, the one reserved only for him. "Perhaps you're right. After all, how else could something so improbable turn out so perfect?" They stood together, watching the stars, 2 souls who'd found each other against impossible odds. The collision that changed everything had become the beginning of everything. And in the vast, endless cosmos, that felt exactly right. The end.